Very German and very efficient. Next on is Sara. She's actually here. She says she's on a mission to convince everybody that sales is not a bad word. I actually like that in her description very much. She's coming from ChartMogul, and she will talk a bit about ChartMogul benchmark data and what do they see with that data for the companies that are scaling up to $10 million. Sara, welcome.
All right, can you hear me okay? Good afternoon, it's witching hour. How's the energy? 2, 3 o'clock is normally around the time where I flirt with that extra cup of coffee that I maybe shouldn't have, but sticking with water in an attempt to deliver an eloquent presentation to you all today. So it's a really big pleasure for me to be here because I had the opportunity to work with Leo for a few years in my role as the head of sales at ChartMogul. And Leo and I were often on the conference circuit. If you're on LinkedIn, you'll see last week I was in London. Next month, I'm in Edinburgh. But here is arguably, I don't know, it's refreshingly fun and interesting to learn more about this region and to meet entrepreneurs and customers of ChartMogul. So why do we come to conferences? Well, it is true that it's networking, it's fun, it's learning, but it's also for a bit of catharsis. And the topic that I want to talk to you about today is data-backed content. It's the journey to $10 million in ARR. And according to ChartMogul data, a mere 13% of B2B SaaS businesses ever hit this milestone on a 10-year horizon. Now, I say that not to be bleak, but rather to acknowledge that it's hard, the work we do. And no matter how many beers we have later, we can share stories about, go-to-market fit challenges, pricing challenges, and, get some empathy from one another, because the reality is that to build a meaningful and lasting business, you've got to grind hard for years. You might have a bad month, a bad quarter, but when we look at this data, does it tell us anything meaningful about how companies that accomplish this feat are able to do so? So, going down a limb here with this analogy, but show of hands if you sobbed in sadness when, in this 1984 cult classic, Artax dies in the movie The Neverending Story. Oh, okay. Well, hang with me, because sales leaders love analogies, and I really like this because The Neverending Story is a lot like building a business. It's a book and a movie about a young warrior who's on this mission to help a fantasy land overcome being succumbed to by the nothing. And so here is a highly intense few scenes where he's stuck in the swamp of sadness. And I know from working with SaaS founders for more than 10 years that some of you are here right now. Maybe your growth rate is really low, your product development is moving at a snail's pace, or you're simply having to do more with less. But spoiler alert, there is actually a path to SaaS growth. Because when things get hard, you can take a step back and you can zoom at looking at your story and your journey up and to the right. And so this is ChartMogul's own revenue growth. The business is about 10 years old. And when I'm having a tough quarter, I like to zoom out in ChartMogul and see, when I'm in one of these troughs, what does the big picture look like? And so I joined in 2018, right after we had made some changes to our pricing model. And over this trajectory, we've intended to build new products, implement new pricing changes, all on this never-ending journey of hitting each and every ARR milestone over the years. And really, the crux of this presentation is going to be about the clear pathway to SaaS growth. I'm going to share with you some data-backed content from a really unique data set of benchmark data that's prepared by ChartMogul's data engineering and insights team. First, we're going to talk about $0 to $1 million. How do you do it? What do the data tell us? Then we're going to look at the path to $10 million. Just 13% of SaaS businesses are able to accomplish this. So what can we see? And then finally, we'll wrap up today's presentation by looking at the remainder of 2024. And I'll show you some insights about H2. So let's dive in. First, a primer on the data we're going to look at. I'm going to show you a lot of eye charts But it's important that you understand where this data comes from. Now, ChartMogul, for those of you that aren't familiar, is the leading subscription analytics solution. And what it does is it ingests all of this raw customer and billing data from wherever it lives. So if you use Stripe, ChargeBee, Xero, Paddle, we ingest all of this data, we clean and normalize it, and then we compute the SaaS metrics that we know subscription businesses care about. And what's really unique about this data is that it's not self-reported. It's raw financial data. It's the same invoices you send your customers. And so every month, on the first of the month, we refresh this data, and you're able to see how SaaS metrics for the industry on the whole is reacting to external factors and market changes. And so the data set is about 2,500 SaaS businesses. And for the first time ever, this data set is going to be enriched in partnership with a company called Dealroom. And so there's a brand new report that's coming out tomorrow. It's not yet released. You're the first audience to see it. But when we release benchmark data, a big question that we get is, okay, well, what if I'm a bootstrap business? Or what if I'm a venture-backed business? Surely growth measures or retention measures are going to look different for these cohorts of businesses. And so today we're going to explore how funding impacts growth and retention from 0 to 1, from 1 to 10, and beyond. All right, so let's dive in. Here's the first section, all about the path to $1 million. What we see is that best-in-class SaaS businesses reach 1 million in a mere 9 months. And so when you look at all of these charts, you'll often see a time horizon on the bottom here. This is ARR. And then we're looking at the top decile, the top quartile, the median, and then sluggish. And so when we look at the median, we see that businesses are typically doing this in less than 3 years. But some people are doing it really, really fast. So how are they managing to do that? Well, our data show us that most SaaS businesses are growing in early days by increasing customer count. And so on the bottom axis here, we have growth in subscribers, and here is growth in ARPA, or average revenue per account. And what you can see is that more than 50% of SaaS businesses are 5 to 10xing their customer count, whereas a mere 5% of businesses are increasing their ARPA by 5 to 10x. And so what does this mean? If you're a founder and you're really struggling with, like, how do I nail my pricing? Well, the truth is that most SaaS businesses are underpriced in early days, and that's okay. What you really need to be focused on here is logo acquisition and speed. Here's an example of a customer I met with about 2 months ago. They hit the $1 million ARR milestone in 4 months. And so, of course, like a big SaaS nerd, I'm drooling over all these stories. And I said, Sara, what was it that that made it possible for you to grow so quickly? And she said, really, it's a focus on speed and launching user-facing features every single week. And so they committed to doing this, and they've been doing it for 2 years, and they have a really great growth trajectory as evidenced by this focus on speed. So it's easy for me to stand up here and say, hey, I know how you grow your business. Go get more customers. But of course, it's sort of a silly thing to say. You're wondering, what tools should I have in my toolbox in order to do this? And so today I just want to highlight 3. The first is segmentation. There's a quote by Christoph Jans, an investor at Point9 Capital, who says, if you fail to segment your customers, you may end up underselling yourself to investors, or worse yet, making bad decisions about your business. And so segmentation is a skill that you should develop to analyze not your customers, but also your customers' customers, and really be able to slice and dice to see, okay, on the whole, it looks like you're growing 26%, but is there a segment of your customers that's growing 40%? Next, I want to encourage you to talk about speed to lead. When I started my sales career, I had a 1-hour SLA. And when I was assigned a lead, if I wasn't following up in 15 minutes, my boss is following up with me. And so in the world of Calendly, my sense is that we've gotten a little bit lazy about this. And you send the customer an email, hey, book a time, thanks so much. But what if you just picked up the phone and called that customer straight away? Lastly, I want to encourage you to look at ways to reduce friction. And when I say reduce friction, I mean, how do you make it easy for your customer to buy? There's a particular story that comes to mind. Of course, you all know Zapier. Maybe some of you know IFT. They came to market about the same time. And IFT did this thing that always kind of made me scratch my head. They said, hey, customers, you want to buy our product? Great. How about you tell us what you think you should pay? And this always, made me scratch my head for exactly the reason that it creates so much cognitive load on your customer to say, I don't know, what are other people paying? What's the right amount? And so how can you really reduce friction in every area of your buyer's journey to include your checkout process? So these are some things that you can maybe take back as a team and discuss if you're on the path to trying to increase customer count. All right, now I promised you we would look at bootstrap businesses versus VC-backed businesses. I think this is a pretty sophisticated audience, so you know what this means. Let's have a look. So this is the time to reach $1 million ARR milestone from the time of first revenue. And what you see is that VC-backed businesses somewhat unsurprisingly grow faster, but bootstrappers have a more linear, constant growth. And the blue lines here are going to be our VC-backed businesses, and the red lines are going to be your bootstrap businesses. And at the median, you really see them converge. These blue lines are on this almost hockey stick path of growth, maybe with some unpredictability, but your red lines have more constant growth. And I think my call to action here is that you really need to lean into your strengths. Whichever path you take, knowing that growth is going to be consistent, and knowing these benchmarks around time to reach milestones can really help you put things in perspective and set expectations with your team or yourself so you don't get burnt out. Grand. So on to the path to 10 million. Best-in-class SaaS businesses reach $10 million in just 3 years. Most of us are doing this in about 5+ years. So the reality is, to build a meaningful SaaS business, it's very likely it will take the better part of a decade. However, you've got some cheeky, fast-growing businesses like Instantly AI, who reached 10 million in a mere 15 months, which again, I was drooling at. I sort of likened them to the Verstappen of SaaS. And it was interesting because when we asked Raul, their co-founders, how are you able to accomplish this? He echoed something really similar to what we heard from Sara. He said our rate of innovation was super high. Every week we're scrutinizing what can we build for ourselves, who use our own product, and for our customers. All right, now when we looked at VC-backed businesses versus bootstrap businesses, we see that VC-backed businesses on the path to 10 million, they still grow faster. And you can see this because these blue lines on the whole are higher. But growth has dropped for everyone, right? So from up 91% or 93% at its highest in late 2020 to 61% now, with Q1 looking a bit tough. But we also see that bootstrap companies adapt quicker. And again, this is a call to action to sort of lean into your strength. If you're a bootstrap business, you're used to doing more with less. And so when the crisis started to hit and growth rates started to jump off a cliff, we saw that bootstrap businesses felt this because they didn't necessarily have cash in their reserves to rely on. But the growth rate really stabilizes and actually looks a little bit nicer than the VC counterparts. Now, regardless of what path you go, we do know that great retention drives 2 to 3 times faster growth. And it's interesting because this slide, we all started banging the retention drum way too late. We were like, oh, you realize your customers over the value of many years. We should work harder to retain them and maybe less on expansion. And the data, I like to look at it like this. If you are a bottom quartile performer, so let me orient you to this first. This is growth rate. These are net revenue retention ranges. These are our businesses with NRR above 100%. These are businesses with NRR between 80 and 100, and then 60 to 80. And so even if you're a bottom quartile performer with NRR above 100%, you're still outperforming the median of businesses with NRR between 80 and 100. Or, to put it another way, even if you're a median performer with NRR above 100%, not even the top quartile of this next cohort can keep up with you. And I put a big red circle around NRR over 100%. Cool. So this is Yoram from Deal Room, and I like this quote because once you've sort of gotten through this 1 million stage, this 2 million stage, you're feeling this early signs of product market fit. What do? You go internally, and you start to focus on the business. You start to focus on hiring, and you spend more time talking about yourself than working on delighting your customer. And so when we're really trying to make sure we can keep retention high, you've got that product piece, and then you've got that retention piece. And so try not to get too focused on the internal bullshit. All right, so now we're going to talk about retention for VC-backed businesses versus bootstrap businesses. And I was sort of surprised by this. This was the insight from the most recent report that we talked about most. VC-backed companies outperform bootstrappers when it comes to customer retention. And so if you have thoughts about this, I'd love to chat. But what you see here is that customer retention for these bootstrap businesses, again, on the whole, is higher. I'm sorry, for VC-backed businesses, rather. And our hypothesis about this is, well, how do you have great retention? We've got to have a fabulous product that delivers on its promise. You've got to have great customer success. And you should have the right pricing, right? It's not product market fit. It's product market price fit. And so to get good at all of these things requires resources. And so one way to maybe interpret this data is to say perhaps VC-backed businesses have higher retention because they've got more resources to draw on. If you're not VC-backed, though, this might be interesting. NRR over 100% is consistently achievable by all top performers. So here what we're looking at is the top decile of SaaS companies in our data set. And what we see is that it doesn't matter what path you take. If you're best-in-class business, you're able to maintain this NRR over a certain threshold. OK, so Liam is the CEO and founder of a company called Time Doctor. And when we source this data, what we do is we send it out to some of our customers. And we say, hey, what do you think? What do you interpret? How useful is this? Because it's our mission to build resources that make it easier to build a SaaS business. And by virtue of providing you with data and insights, maybe that has a takeaway for you that applies to your business. And Liam said, look, revenue overall is getting crunched for everyone. SaaS sucks. Doesn't matter if you're bootstrapped or you're VC-backed. And so for him, this meant that choosing the bootstrap path was more agreeable because the difference between NRR, whether you're funded or not, means that Liam has the potential to maybe have a nicer exit. OK, so there's no transition slide, but this is a transition. We're going to talk about what you should be doing as you enter these double-digit ARR ranges. And I'm going to give you some levers to maybe pull on to sustain growth past 10 million in ARR. And so the first insight here is that annual plans become increasingly important. Now, I told you earlier that in early days, logo acquisition and speed. Don't worry so much about pricing. You're probably underpriced. But as you develop that pricing muscle, your ability to sell annual plans becomes increasingly important. And so what you see is that in these higher ARR ranges, the percentage of ARR that comes from annual or multi-year plans increases. And so how do you sell annual plans? Well, I can tell you what you don't do. You don't look at your sales team and say, go sell to the enterprise. Because if you do, and you have a junior sales team, they'll probably burn your leads. And if you do, and you have a mature sales team, they'll go find new jobs. But I say this because selling to the enterprise, it's a team sport. You need to have the sales acumen and skills, but you also need to have the legal and compliance. You need to have the product ability to deliver. You need to have the customer success and the onboarding. So selling to the enterprise is a full team motion, and your business should approach it that way. If you're not sure where to get started with selling annual, don't sell 3-month pilots. Sell 15-month pilots with an opt-out. Talk to me about pilots. That's a topic I really like. And just start a hit list when customers are asking for that SOC 2 compliance. You can pressure test really whether that's a decision criteria for them, but keep a running list about what customers are looking for, and then figure out how to build them into your roadmap or not. OK, so post 10 million, what other growth levers should you have in your inventory? Well, unsurprisingly, you should have expansion. And so what we're looking at here is a split of ARR gained by ARR range. And really the insight here is that expansion contributes more of ARR gained in these higher ARR range businesses. And so this is sort of unsurprising because you go out and you get a bunch of customers, and then over time you can deliver more value and then charge them for the value that you deliver. But it's a really delicate balance because an over-reliance on expansion can be quite dangerous. For one, it can weaken your new biz muscle. And if you're just thinking about price hikes or usage charges, are you still going to be hunting for new logos with the same fervor as when you didn't have very many customers in the early days? But an over-reliance on expansion can also be dangerous because you run the risk of alienating long-standing customers who have been with you for some time. And so you need to be careful because one or both of these things combined can actually really hurt a quarter or a year. You might have a few big churns, you might have a few months of weak new biz growth, and when you combine those things, because we're looking at expansion, reactivation, churn, contraction all together, that's going to really hit your growth rate on the whole. So you need to have a delicate balance of how these things interplay. And so this is sort of a cheeky slide title. It's like expansion doesn't always mean expansion. But I just wanted to tell you a short story. We have an account manager called Megan. She's based in Vancouver. She's ex-Shopify. She's really talented. And I gave Megan a book of business that was challenging. They're our biggest customers with our biggest expectations, and they pay accordingly. And so Megan's idea was to do audits with each and every one of those customers. And so she didn't come in and say, "Hi, I'm Megan, your account manager. Let's meet about your business objectives," because frankly, I don't want to meet with my vendors about business objectives. It's a waste of my time. But Megan said, "Hey, let me frame the conversation for you. You've been using ChartMogul for however many years. Here's what you're using. How do you like it? Do you have any feature improvements for us, any requests? Here's what your peers are using that you're not using. Here's what you're paying for that you're not using. Why is that? Are those things uninteresting to you? Did you not know that they were there? Because when you're a business like ChartMogul that's been around for 10 years, some of the things we've built, frankly, they're just not very discoverable. And for some customers, uncovering those conversations and just giving it to them up front allows us to have a conversation about that. This is the thing that they like most, underused features. They're like, I didn't even know that existed. And so Megan ran this campaign, and it was pretty fruitful, but it allowed us to go in and do cleanup in some accounts that have been long-standing with us and uncover some skeletons, if you will, improve the health of those accounts, and then really lay a nice groundwork for us to cross-sell our new product to them. And so as they started seeing new things, they were like, "Oh, what about this new thing?" And that's the second product that we released about a year ago. And so it's a long game, and you need to be careful about it, but it's all in the service of helping your customers, right? Okay, and then for our last lever of post 10 mil, my call to action is don't sleep on reactivation. And Andrew from Paddle presented about reactivation being a big theme in their data set, and we see the same thing. And so it is true that, well, let me ask this. Raise your hand if someone in your business owns reactivation. Someone's responsible for reactivating customers. I don't see any hands. One hand, okay, great. It's true that reactivation is largely unowned or at most owned by marketing with an ad hoc nurture campaign. And I've seen businesses where reactivation is as high as 30%, meaning for every 10 customers you lose, 3 are coming back. And in a market where winning customers is really hard, compare the level of effort associated with winning a new customer versus bringing someone back to the fold, someone that's familiar with your pricing, someone that's familiar, even has muscle memory using your application. And so if you can strategize around building reactivation campaigns, you should do so. In our business, we have an account list that says churned but recently active. It sends an alert in Slack to the sales rep that's responsible for that territory, and that person's responsible for saying, "Hey, did you want to just check out our benchmark data? If so, totally free. You can log in and check it out." Or, is there a scenario where it would make sense to reevaluate ChartMogul? Okay, so let's take a look finally at what the data show for the rest of the year to come. It is true that the past 4 years have forced us all to adapt. And so on the bottom here, you've got time, quarter over quarter. Growth rates have really come off a cliff for the top quartile or the median, down from 94 to 58% for top performers, and from 46 to 23, so half the growth rates that we were experiencing early on, and all of the ramifications that that entails. But the good news is that, this isn't the good news part. This is the don't worry, we're still all in it together part. It's the most of us are on a similar growth trajectory. What I mean here is that it doesn't matter if you are doing 3 million or you're doing 15 million. Growth rates are actually all hovering somewhere between 25 and 35%. And so maybe that's helpful to know. But here's the good news. Some are reigniting growth. And what you can see, this is what we just looked at. So these are median performers by ARR range. And these are top quartile performers by ARR range. And so what's interesting is that if you are a best-in-class business, you're really outstripping competitors with growth rates as high as 85% or 60%, more than double the median counterparts. And so we've talked about a lot. I've shown you a lot of eye charts. I try to marry some stories in there. But overall, what we see in the benchmark data is that there is a clear path to SaaS growth. It might take 3 years to hit 1 million. It's going to take the better part of a decade to hit 10. Only about 13% of businesses do it. But you've got a lot of levers in your inventory that you can count on to get there. So in early days, you need to be focusing on customer segmentation, lead to speed, and reducing friction. You're really focusing on customer count, increasing them as fast as you can. If you do raise capital, you might grow faster, but that growth might be more unpredictable, and you need to be comfortable with that. Now, in the 10-plus range, you need to look at your MRR levers, so your great retention, your retention strategies, your expansion strategies, your ability to sell annual or multi-year commits. And so the catharsis is we're all experiencing similar ups and downs, but those that are really going at it, those top performers, they're outstripping the rest of us. So you really want to focus your energy on becoming one of those top performers if you're somewhere in the median. And if you're not sure how you compare to your cohort, what you can do is you can sign up for a ChartMogul trial and you can layer on your own SaaS metrics to the same benchmark data set that we're looking at. We just refreshed them 10 days ago, so they're pretty novel, and then you can see kind of how you compare to the rest. My experience is that if you're on this never-ending journey, what are the things that make you a top performer? Well, it's sort of like quasi-stereotypical, but it's the people, right? It's the cast of characters that you bring with you so that when you're stuck in the swamp of sadness, you can rally around the business goal of building a high ARR per full-time employee business. If you hire people that really get SaaS metrics, they really get unit economics, they'll understand when your business has to make tough decisions, and they'll be on board, right? Speed, this is Falcor, the dragon in this fun film. And so I don't know if anybody's read Frank Slootman's Amp It Up, but he talks about when business is light and airy and coming to work is fun, the speed of execution and then the results make work enjoyable, which we want, right? And then focus and context. So this is where your ICP, your awareness of where you fit in and what you're doing and why you're doing it, kind of rallies all of these things together. And so wherever you are on your journey, I hope there's some takeaways either from the raw benchmark data or just from the businesses that have gone on it on their own. And if you're interested in more, I'd be happy to chat. I'm here through Thursday. I know there's some ChartMogul customers and friendly faces. And so I hope to have the opportunity to speak with you. And I thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Sara.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm Luca. Well, my question is regarding the pilots that you've mentioned, if it's not an issue to discuss. So basically, what's the principle there? So you probably go with an annual subscription and then give 3 first months to try out and get out of jail free card, or how does it work?
Yeah, I get this question from founders a lot, especially founders who are new to selling longer commits. The truth is that when you're selling to your customers, you're teaching them how to buy. And so I get anxious about selling 3 months that then in essentially 120 days, you're going to have to renegotiate everything, and it's all up for grabs again. And so the model that I like, when it makes sense, and you need to be careful about the language you use. Some people call it a pilot, some people call it a proof of concept. No matter what you call it, it should have specific success criteria. And if those success criteria are met, then you say, hey, look, we get it, you're taking a chance on us. We want to de-risk it to you, but ultimately this solution makes sense for you to use in the long term. And so we're going to go it on this path of evaluating it. And so sign this agreement. It's a 15-month agreement with a 3-month, basically one-time opt-out. And so you can exercise the opt-out if the evaluation criteria or the success criteria aren't met. But we're entering into this commercial negotiation to do it once and to do it with the mental sort of fortitude that it's going to work out, and we're going to be able to deliver that. I hope that helps.
I have one question again. What was I remember when ChartMogul stepped out with the benchmarks, with those data. Now it's been a year or something like that?
No, not even.
Not even?
6 months, maybe.
So what's the customer feedback from your side? Do you have any customer feedback on the numbers that you presented?
Yeah, so the good feedback about benchmarks is that they're largely real time. A lot of folks, when talking to investors, they're benchmarking them against benchmark data that's a year or more old. And often benchmark data is very specific to like a VC investment thesis or a specific geography. So people like that it's really representative and it's real time. What people are hungry for is some of what we've tried to address with this, which is further segmentation. And we need more data beyond 30 million, beyond 50 million, because we don't have a terribly big data set on which to draw on. So that's something we're working on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sara, for this.
Thanks.
We're going to have another coffee break now. And we are back at 3:40.